Yeah, sure.
Okay.
May I start? Well, yeah, I'm Marcel. I'm a student of the University of Heidelberg, currently based in Prague for an exchange semester. I'm part of the disaster mappers. We work on OpenStreetMap data, integrated in the hot community, data quality, everything around that, map swipe for sure. Yeah, and we had the pleasure to be at the State of the Map Tanzania together with Janet, and yeah, gave some workshops there.
Thanks. Next. Amelia, do you want to say?
Yeah, I'm Amelia. I work for Humanitarian Open Source Team. I am here in Wanza with some of Janet's community mappers. You guys want to say hello?
Hello. Hello.
Oh, hello. Who was that? I sounded like Benedicto.
Benedicto is not here yet, but he's here in the room.
Okay.
Yeah.
So do you just want to say your name? Janet knows who's here.
I'm Abubakar.
I am Scarius from Chilwell.
Daniel from Youth and Women Emancipation in Shinyanga.
Gaila Alpha Mleka Lubia.
Sengamaltini Twaweza Mwanza.
Fantastic. Maybe Amelia, if you've got access to the document, you could write their name. To write their names.
Yeah.
Joseph, do you want to go next?
Hey, Janet, this is Joseph. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, this is Joseph. I'm in Valencia, Spain. I have a degree in finance and in GIS, and I'm glad to be here.
Thank you. Paulo?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yep.
I'm Paulo. I'm speaking from Brazil. I'm a geologist with some experience in remote sensing and GIS, and I'm very excited to help.
Thank you. Simon?
Hi, my name's Simon Wild. I'm in Perth in Australia. My background is in geology and engineering in the oil field.
Fantastic. Thank you. Okay, Marcel, do you want to kick off?
Yeah, sure. Just because it's also very basic about like what is Fieldpapers. So if it's redundant or anybody, we can just ping me and then we skip and go on with questions or like the hands-on part. Because I prepared like one sheet of Fieldpapers in order to like upload it and show how the georeferencing works. So
should I just ask how many people here have used Fieldpapers before? Anyone?
I haven't.
I used them in, this is Joseph, I used them in a classroom setting, but that's the extent of it.
Okay. Okay, why don't you talk it through briefly? And
yeah,
if
sure.
you've got questions, then they can ask directly now.
Yeah, sure. Okay, so Fieldpapers, what is it about? The motivation is, of course, it's about like mobile mapping, ground truth mapping, without relying on technology like GPS or smartphones. The only technology we need is the homepage of Fieldpapers in order to create our atlas, our area of interest where we're working on, and in order to then get our collected data back georeference, and then in order to export it to like editors or a desktop GIS, for instance. So yeah, we can record coordinates of places by using just a pen and a field paper, and that's all based on the field papers itself with a workflow in georeferencing it via a quick response or a QR code. So this is just like a sketch, like how does it work? Copied from the Fieldpapers website. you create an atlas of an area you're interested in, you print it out, you go in the field, you take notes or observations, or for our case in OpenStreetMap, it's more about find data which is not there, like for instance, creating new data or update the data or validate it. Yeah, and afterwards you take your notes, you capture it. Best would be to scan it with a scanner, or even sometimes it works. For some phones it works. We are just like, I think we're still in the phase of getting that to work. But okay, keep on. So what are the use cases, especially for us or the community mappers then? I just picked here like 3 different. Like the first thing I already mentioned is creating OpenStreetMap data. So because like for the remote mapping, we're always relying on satellite imagery, which is in places of Tanzania. Like for Bing imagery, that it's composites. So it ranges from, for instance, in some places from 2011 till 2014. But even if it's at the place we are mapping 2014, it's still like 4 years ago. So Fieldpapers can help us in order to go out in the field and see the ground truth information, the real objects, and we see, okay, it's not yet mapped, so we take a pen and we draw it on our field paper. And yeah, of course, that's possible for different objects, buildings, land use, whatever spatial data we want to capture. The next use case, enrich OpenStreetMap data. That's especially for the case like when we had a campaign in the tasking manager project, remote mappers created buildings, but they don't have local knowledge or the ground truth knowledge about, for instance, what's the type of a building? Is it a hospital? Is it a school? What's the specific name of that object? Maybe opening hours, or like Ramani Huria in Dar es Salaam, they capture data about the material of houses in order to create resilient maps, like for if there are floodings, which infrastructure or which buildings are critical or vulnerable to these floods, for instance. And of course, validating OpenStreetMap data. As I said, in some regions, we do remote mapping based on old data, old satellite imagery. So we can use Fieldpapers in order to we print out OpenStreetMap data, go into the field and check, okay, is this building or is this object still there? Did it may change, like the location, or is that hospital still a hospital? So yeah, so that's this are, I think, the 3 use cases for our project here. So an example workflow, a bit more detailed, like the 3 steps 2 slides ago, and yeah, and condensed from the sheet we got from Philip. So yeah, so it's very straightforward. You create an account on fieldpapers.org. You had to make an atlas, and then the crucial part, of course, about your project, choose your area of interest, the location and extent, the amount of tiles. That means like every tile of an atlas, for instance, if you print it in A4 or in the letter format, you have to choose the specific level of detail. For instance, if you go for land use mapping, you may take a lower scale than if you want to do map buildings. You have to choose your background image. Do you want to rely on OpenStreetMap or satellite imagery? That's also very crucial in order to locate yourself on the map. If you want to map, for instance, buildings in an area where there's no OpenStreetMap data, then your field paper is useless because you can't orientate on other objects. So then I would recommend to use a satellite imagery and to use for natural features to locate yourself and the object you want to map. Yeah, then just make your atlas, download it as PDF, of course print it. The first page is always an overview sheet. I will show that hands-on in the next slide. Then it comes to the field mapping. And there's also a crucial part depending on the project and the area. May you want to define a coding scheme. scheme together with your remote mapper, who will later do the conflation of your drawings. For instance, if you have a very densely populated area, lots of buildings, and you want to create different attributes, it's not possible to write everything on it. You need a coding scheme which everybody like a standard, of course. And yeah, maybe add additional papers for the attributes. So you just write the codings on the field paper and maybe use the backside of it for more information. And sorry. Yeah, so after the field mapping is done, you go back to the site of fieldpapers.org and go to upload. And then you need the scan of your sheets. And you need always one scan per sheet in image format. PDFs don't work. You download it, your atlas will be downloaded as PDF, and then you print it as a PDF, but later on you need to scan it as a picture in JPEG, PNG format. And that's a crucial part. Like, in order that the whole thing works, you need a good quality DPI greater than 200 dpi, enough light, focus on the QR code on the lower right, angle as possible to 90 degree as possible. Yeah, in order that the fieldpapers.org site can read out the QR code and georeference it properly. Yeah, and then you upload it, and then you got different options for your sheet which you uploaded, and you can edit it directly in ID and JOSM. That works with like a TMS technology. It's basically the same technology which is used for displaying Bing image, for instance. It's also just like an image file, more or less, but it's georeferenced and provided by a server. And of course, you can use it as a GeoTIFF, like just a georeferenced image file, download it and open it in QGIS or another GIS software, and yeah, it will appear at the, like in the coordinate system, at the right place where it was meant. How does it look like? These are some pictures from MCross, how they use it in the field. And on the right side, you can see how a field paper looks like in JOSM. It's like yeah, like I said, like a Bing image layer just in the background, and then you have a data layer on top of it, and there you do the edits or the digitization. So okay, let's see how the screen sharing works. If it's only for the PDF, or can you see my browser? Nobody?
No, I can still see your presentation at the moment.
Okay. Okay. So I change it here. Share screen. Now it should show my browser. Yep. Okay. So this is basically the fieldpapers.org webpage. Yeah, on the right you have the login. Just go there. I got an account. Sign in. If you don't have an account, you need to sign up, and then you receive an email with an activation link. Very straightforward and very similar to the hot export tool or the OpenStreetMap itself. Okay, so I'm logged in. In order to create an atlas, I just go to Make. I see the OpenStreetMap background. I'm in Musoma right now. I already prepared in Igombe. It's just north of Mwanza. There's not so much mapped, so I thought it would be a perfect example. And you get different options for your atlas to make. Like first, I would recommend to zoom in to a detail, and to a detail which is satisfying for your project, of course. And then you set the paper size, for example, A4. That's, I think, a standard for printing. And if you're and you reduce it maybe to like only one sheet, and then you see, okay, that would be displayed then. Then you go on pin grid to map, because then it stacks at the zoom level. And then you go out, you zoom out until a zoom level where you can see the whole area you're interested in, and then you add more sheets. Oh, that's wrong. Like that, for instance. Yeah, you add a title, of course. The base map to change, I just talked about. You have different options, not only satellite and OpenStreetMap. There's also black and white or Mapbox satellite, for instance. That's the satellite imagery. Yeah, up to your project. How do you need it? Then in the end, you go on Make Atlas. I already prepared that. Like you can see it here. That's Mwanza in Gombe North. And then you can download it as PDF or even as a GeoJSON. That's then just a grid for making a map in QGIS, for instance. Okay, so then you have one of these sheets. You fill in some new information. For instance, I did it for the first. Can you see that picture? That website?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. So I already I printed it out. I filled in some land use, farmland. I called it, some new buildings on in the center. One building I crossed out as that could be a coding scheme for validation. So in order that building is not there anymore. Like the basic attribute, this building is a hospital. That's just an example. It's not ground truth. I was not there. And school, for instance, like type, name. Yeah, and then you just go to upload here and point to your scanned image with your drawings, of course. And then you upload it, and the processing doesn't take more than 30 seconds. And if there's anything wrong with your picture or the QR code is not readable, you see it on the lower right side, QR code, then an error message will appear, and then you have to try it again with another scan. Okay, so like I said, you can download it as a GeoTIFF, or you directly edit it in ID. For instance, if I click there, ID will be opened, and the TMS link to the field paper with a georeferenced image will also open automatically. So I can see here, okay, yeah, these objects were in OpenStreetMap before. And now if the image is loaded in higher quality, yeah, for instance, I could go here, okay, this object is a building, and I could add another tag for, or just edit the feature for hospital, for instance. Okay, that's a hospital building then. Or I go to that building and delete it in terms of, because it was validated as there's no building anymore. Or I go over to that one, edit feature, school building. Or here I go for, that is a building. Yeah, that's very straightforward. Farmland, that's in this case it's land use. In order to use it with JOSM, you need JOSM opened already, and you need the remote access tool, like the enable remote control. That's that's the remote button in the preferences. Just activate it, restart it. It's the same tool you need for the tasking manager, and when you then click on JOSM, it will automatically OpenStreetMap data will be loaded, and the field paper will be the background image. Yeah, that's pretty much it. Like on the slides, I put some more. That's the hands-on part. Like you see on the left side, you see the PDF as printed, and on the right side, my scan with some points in order to get it flat. Yeah, so that's the basic principle. I also put some more resources in, like there are lots of people, lots of different communities using it, mcross, HOT, of course. There's also the GitHub page by Stamen, and yeah, so, and a YouTube video by US8, Learn OSM, of course. Okay, so I'm looking forward to some questions. That's it.
Thanks very much, Marcel. That was fantastic. I've got a couple of questions.
Yep.
One, is there any guidance about what is a sensible scale for the when you're creating the atlas? And secondly, and this is for the community mappers as well, I'm thinking that adding road names this way would be sensible. How generally do they, A, to you, Marcel, is that the case? And B, to Benedicto and the other community mappers, are there generally road names that people can add or not?
Okay, so I start with the first question. Of course, the scale always depends on what do you want to map. If it's just for validation or like attributes, I would go for a low scale, because then you have like more objects. Of course, then you need a coding scheme, but it's more efficient in ways of you don't need to print that much. If you're interested in really mapping objects, for instance, buildings, and want to be like precise, of course, you need to go for a higher scale. And the roads, your question was like if it's possible to map the road names using Fieldpapers.
Yes, I would think that would be a good way.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, just the only thing is like how do you how do you draw it on the map? You need a scheme for that. If you just do like just write it next to the street, or
couldn't you write it just along the road?
Yeah, and then you see here in ID Editor, like there was one street in the center of my field paper, and this data is also loaded because it crosses my area of interest in that sheet. And yeah, if I know the name, just right next to it. In this case, it's just secondary road. There's no name up to now. I would edit. Yeah.
Thank you. Anyone else? Any questions?
So I don't know if it'd work for roads, but we were saying here that definitely for buildings, if there's a load of writing all over it, it might be quite messy. So what we've suggested is like a numbering system, at least for buildings, which could maybe be used for roads as well, or maybe roads are like A, B, C, and then on a separate piece of paper that also gets scanned, there's like the details of that feature to go along with it to avoid, I guess, scribblings overlapping all over the map. Would that be helpful?
Yeah, sure. Like that would be like a coding scheme, or numbers, A, B, C, and then having like a spreadsheet or just another paper note for notes, and then like, okay, house 1, these attributes, street A, these attributes, and that would be then also scanned and sent to the remote mapper, of course, and then he needs 2 sheets then. But yeah, I think that's feasible. Yeah.
Thank you. Any questions from anybody else? I will send the recording to everyone in case you want to watch any of it again.
I have a question.
Yes?
I am Nusula Nzoa, Songwe Mepa.
Hello.
Yes,
great to hear you again.
He's from Songwe. You met him at State of the Map.
Yeah.
Yes. So I tried to download a map, but I failed. I saw on the features, but the rest failed to be downloaded. So how I can solve this problem?
You create an atlas already?
Yes.
And then you try to download the PDF file?
Yes.
Okay, and the PDF file didn't show the map, or was it maybe an area without OpenStreetMap objects?
Yes.
Because I don't know your specific case right now. Like normally the homepage works fine. Like up to now I didn't have any problems with the data not appearing. But of course, if you like get it, I don't know. Do you still see my screen?
Yes, I see.
Okay. For instance, if you take an area where you want to map and there's not one object in OpenStreetMap, of course there's nothing which can be then displayed. And that was I was talking about if you want to map anything in Fieldpapers using OpenStreetMap background layers, you need objects on the map to orientate with, because otherwise, you don't know where you are in the map, and you don't know where the objects are in the map. So if you have a street, for instance, or at least a building, then you can orient it. Otherwise, if you want to map an area without any objects yet mapped in OpenStreetMap, go for the satellite imagery as a background layer and search for natural features, which you can then use for locate yourself, locate the object. But I don't know if it was the case for you. Which area did you try to download?
Marcel, if I can just explain, I created tasking manager tasks for the areas of interest. So for Songwe, I did one for Tunguru, and then created the atlas from there. So you should have that atlas printed.
Okay, just so where do I get to the spreadsheet?
And I've just put the link to that one in the chat box.
In the chat box, okay.
Yeah, I think, Amelia, these are the ones that were given out.
Okay.
Okay. Fieldpapers.org atlases.
Hello there. This is Johannes.
Can you see the
so
one?
I just downloaded it, but for me it works fine. Like if I download it, the PDF file opens. I have the overview of. Okay, it's untitled, but it's Turduma town.
Okay, does anybody else have any questions? We've got about 7 minutes left before this call cuts out.
I just discovered the chat. Were there any... oh, sorry, what's that? Were there any questions in the chat?
The question, this is Johannes. We had a problem on those Fieldpapers in case the area that does not have OSM data. Is that we should use a satellite image, and when we select background as a satellite, it didn't appear until we change into Mapbox to that's how it appear. But the question is, when we download, that is the question for someone from Songwe. When he download that area with the satellite background, the overall image, the first page that will show the overall pages, it show the satellite image as a background, but other pages they didn't show. So we are wondering what's wrong happened there.
Can I suggest that
just the overview?
It's probably better to choose places to make sure that the place has been already mapped from satellite images by remote mappers, because otherwise I think it will be very difficult to use Fieldpapers on an area that is really unmapped. And we have a way to get remote mappers to map places from satellite images first. So I would concentrate on the places that are already mapped. And if you want to map a place that isn't, if you let me know, I will create a tasking manager task for it first, which is what we did with these atlases. Does that make sense?
Yes, and the question also, there's someone asking if we already uploading those Fieldpapers that already feed some of details, where someone can he or she can see it.
Sorry, can you repeat that? You mean like you have your you were in the field, did some details, and then you send it to the remote mapper?
We go to Fieldpapers and we upload. So we want, if someone wants to see those Fieldpapers, where he or she can see it.
Okay,
well,
so
you can share the link, of course.
So the idea is that community field mappers are partnered with remote mappers, and I sent out a sheet saying who people are partnered with, and then so you can share it once you have completed your field paper. If you,
Okay.
you can send it to them either generally by email, and then they can upload it.
Okay.
Was that the question?
Yeah, but those people that just wanted, if they want to see, maybe there is a link that is, you can click and you see, oh, this is my field paper that's already uploaded.
Well, I don't know. I mean, for the workflow, it makes more sense to scan it with the phone and then send it via email to a remote mapper.
Okay.
Of course, because of connection and stability. But of course, if you set up a spreadsheet, you could also use like that for sharing the link to the uploaded field papers, because every field paper which you upload got a unique link. That's how, for instance, the ID or JOSM works. They have just a link to that georeferenced image of the map. So that's a way to share it, of course.
Because so we already have a spreadsheet, so it would be certainly possible to upload it into that spreadsheet.
Okay.
Instead, or as well as emailing it. I think we have about 2 minutes before this cuts out. Are there any questions from any of the remote mappers?
Hey, Janet, this is Joseph. I think in the instructions, there was some discussion about creating that spreadsheet by the location mappers and then uploading that with a link. And that seems like it would work very well.
Yeah. Anyone else?
No, I think I got it. So the field mappers are supposed to get in touch with us after they upload the image, or they can share the image with us and we upload it on field mappers. Is that right?
Sorry, so they will share. I think the idea is that the field mappers will share the images with you, with the remote mapper, once they've done their walkabout, etc. And then you will upload it. But you will continue to communicate with your field mapping group. So if there are any questions, and you can update them, etc. So it's more of a collaborative exercise. Does that make sense?
Yes, that's fine.
But this is we're just starting this process, so I'm sure we will probably want to evolve it as we go on. So any suggestions for improvements will be very useful.
Okay, thanks.
I had a suggestion.
Yes?
I am Scarius from Action When.
Yep.
My suggestion was that the phones we are using, especially these Vodafone phones, its capability on this working, on mapping, is so slow, and it takes much time to fill some features.
Thank you. If I understand that there are problems with the phones, they are cheap. If we want better phones, you need to talk to Amelia. Okay, I think we have 1 more minute. So does anybody have any final comments?
No, and I see.
Another comment.
Yeah.
We still need support for the instrument we are using, especially phones. They have no power to access network for certain areas. So community mappers, when they go far away, they failed to upload or to take any point because of network.
Yes, I realize there are many challenges for community mappers, which is why we've set up this link for these remote mappers who volunteered to help you.
Okay. So it would be good if we will have a phone for all networks. This will help us.
Okay. That's over to you. Talk to Amelia after the call.
Yes.
Any more things about field papers specifically?
Yeah, okay, field paper. I think because today is the first day, by tomorrow we'll have more comments. But today we are happy for what we get, and we are continuing to discuss.